The moment my lips touched his, I swore I heard the crowd stop breathing. Maybe it was because they'd never seen two guys kiss at a dirt track race before. Or maybe it was because, against every rule I'd ever set for myself, I didn't hate it. I should have pulled away first. I should have laughed it off, called it a joke. But when I opened my eyes, Mason was still staring at me like I just handed him something sacred or stolen it from him. And that's when I knew I was in trouble. The bet started as nothing more than a stupid dare, two adrenaline junkies burning up the California backroads. We'd been rivals since high school, always trying to outdo each other. Faster cars, riskier turns, bigger egos. When Mason challenged me to a street race that night, I didn't hesitate. The prize? Loser had to kiss the winner. It was meant to be a joke. I said yes before I could think too hard about it. The roar of engines still echoed in my ears when I lost. Barely. He crossed the line seconds before me, headlights cutting through the dark like knives. When he stepped out of his car, sweat glistening on his neck, that grin plastered on his face, I almost punched him just to wipe it off. Instead, I kissed him, and it ruined me. The following week was a blur of confusion and denial. Mason acted like nothing had changed, showing up at the garage where we both worked, leaning over my car with that easy smile, tossing me a wrench like we were still just rivals. But I could feel it, the shift. Every time he stood too close, every time his hand brushed mine, something sparked between us. "You ever think about it?" he asked one night, leaning against his Camaro while I smoked behind the shop. "About what?" "That kiss." I laughed. Too fast. "You mean the joke?" "Yeah, hilarious." He didn't laugh. Didn't feel like a joke to me. I looked away, pretending to check my phone. But my heart was pounding like I was back on the track. Mason had always been the type who didn't back down from anything, not a race, not a fight, not even the truth. "I'm straight," I muttered. It was the easiest lie I'd ever told, and the worst one. "Yeah," he said softly, stepping closer. "You keep telling yourself that." He walked away, leaving me standing there, cigarette burning down to ash, the night suddenly too quiet. I started avoiding him after that. Skipped the late-night meetups, ignored his texts, worked different shifts. But fate, or maybe just bad timing, had other plans. A month later, we ended up at the same underground race in San Diego. The air was thick with smoke and the smell of burnt rubber. Mason was already there when I arrived, leaning on his car, arms crossed, eyes locking onto me like he'd been waiting. "Thought you quit," he said. "Guess I lied. Seems to be a habit of yours." The race that night was chaos, cars fishtailing, engines screaming, lights flashing like some fever dream. I drove like I was trying to outrun him, but he was always in my rearview mirror. Always there. When my tire blew on the last stretch, I lost control and spun out. He was the first one at my door, pulling me out before I could even unbuckle. "You okay?" His voice cracked, panic bleeding through. "Yeah." I lied again. My hands were shaking. His weren't. He pressed his forehead to mine, breath ragged. "You could have died, idiot. Would have saved me from losing another bet," I joked weakly. He laughed, then a real laugh, and for the first time I didn't want to run. That night something shifted for good. We sat on the hood of his car under the stars, the Pacific wind brushing against us. He handed me a beer, and for a while we didn't talk. Just silence and the sound of waves somewhere beyond the cliffs. Finally, he said, "You know, I don't care if it was a bet or not. I just know I've wanted to kiss you again since that night." I stared at him, the moonlight catching the edge of his jaw. He looked tired, not from racing, but from pretending. Maybe I did too. "Mason, this is crazy." "So was the first race we ever ran," he said, smiling faintly. "Didn't stop you then." The wind carried the smell of salt and gasoline, and before I could stop myself, I leaned in. The second kiss wasn't a dare. It wasn't about winning or losing. It was about finally giving in. When the kiss ended, neither of us said anything. The air between us was electric, like the aftermath of lightning, silent but humming with power. I remember looking at him, his eyes soft, searching, waiting for me to say something that could make sense of what we were both feeling. But I couldn't. I'd spent years defining myself by what I wasn't: not soft, not scared, not gay. Yet in that moment, under the California stars, all those walls I'd built cracked wide open. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of waves and the smell of burnt coffee. Mason was sitting on the tailgate of his truck, barefoot, hair messy, like some careless angel who'd crashed into my life. He handed me a cup and said, "You snore." I threw a pebble at him. "You talk in your sleep." "Yeah?" What did I say? I hesitated. "My name." He smiled, small and almost shy. "Guess that's fair. You were in my dream." I didn't know whether to laugh or run again. But the truth was, I didn't want to run anymore. Of course, the world wasn't ready to make it easy. Word got around about the kiss. Someone at that first race had filmed it, posted it online. The video blew up, turned into some viral rival-to-lover joke the internet couldn't get enough of. At first, I tried to laugh it off, but it burned. The guys at the garage teased me, and one of them even said, "Guess we know why you keep losing to Mason, huh?" I wanted to punch him. Instead, I walked out. Mason found me that night sitting behind the shop, chain smoking like it could burn the shame out of me. He didn't say anything at first, just sat next to me, our shoulders touching lightly. "Let them talk," he said finally. "They don't know a damn thing about us." "Maybe they don't have to," I muttered. "Maybe we just stop this before it gets worse." He turned toward me, eyes sharp. "Worse for who, Tyler? You, or the version of you that you think everyone wants?" That hit harder than I wanted to admit. "You don't get it," I said. "You've always been comfortable with who you are. I'm still figuring out what the hell I am." He was quiet for a long moment. Then he reached over, took the cigarette from my fingers, crushed it out on the ground. "You're the guy I kissed. Twice. That's a start." I looked at him, really looked: the bruise on his knuckle from the race, the grease under his nails, the softness in his eyes that didn't belong to the cocky bastard I'd met years ago. Maybe we were both pretending, just in different ways. Weeks passed. The races went on. People stopped whispering. Maybe they got bored. Or maybe we stopped giving them a reason to. Mason and I fell into the strange rhythm, fixing cars by day, driving out to nowhere by night. Sometimes we didn't talk at all. Sometimes he'd rest his head on my shoulder while the engine cooled, and that said enough. One night, after a race, I asked him, "You ever think about the first time we met?" He laughed. "Yeah, you nearly ran me off the road. I was trying to win. You were trying to impress me." I rolled my eyes. "You wish." He smiled, leaning back against the hood. "Maybe. But here's the thing, Tyler, I've always thought racing's a lot like falling in love. You can plan the turns, know every rule, but when you hit the right speed, you just let go." That stuck with me, because maybe that's what I'd been fighting all along: not him, not the world, but the fear of letting go. When the spring season came, we entered the state circuit together, the same team for once. Reporters loved the story. Ex-rivals, now partners on the track. They didn't know how true that word had become. Mason would always grin when they said it, while I tried to play it cool. But every time he slipped his hand into mine when no one was looking, my chest ached in the best way possible. The final race was brutal. Heat shimmering off the asphalt, engines screaming like beasts. Mason and I drove like we'd never driven before, not against each other, but for something bigger. When we crossed the finish line, side by side, it didn't matter who won. For the first time, it wasn't about the bet, the pride, or proving anything. It was about being seen. Afterward, as the sun bled into the horizon, Mason pulled me close, right there in front of everyone. No crowd cheers, no cameras this time, just us. He kissed me, slow and certain, like the world could burn and he'd still choose me in the flames. "I told you," he whispered against my lips, "you'd lose more than a race." I laughed because he was right. I'd lost the version of myself that was too scared to feel. I'd lost the mask, the noise, the lies. But in losing all that, I'd found something real. I looked at him, his hair tousled, his smile dangerous and soft all at once. "Then I guess I'm done racing," I said. "I've already won." He grinned. "Not a chance. You're driving next time." And as the engines cooled and the stars blinked awake over the California sky, we stood there, two men who'd spent years running in circles, finally finding the finish line in each other. For once, I didn't want to run. I just wanted to stay. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe to stay updated with the latest videos.